Well, hello and welcome. I've wanted to come up here and remake this video for some time. It was the second one that I did in the series when I started the Rail Relics channel, and it's fair to say I made some mistakes, and also there's a lot more media available to me because what I wanted to talk about was Walnut Tree Viaduct. Now behind me is the portal of Garth Tunnel, which you can see is all bricked up, and ahead of me is a very overgrown remains of the viaduct. So let me tell you a little bit more about why I'm here and a little bit more about why this viaduct was here. You see, in the 1880s, there was a lot of coal being mined up in the valleys and heading down towards the docks. And the mine owners were getting a little bit impatient. First of all, they were having to pay some of the railway companies, especially the Taff Vale Railway, quite a bit in tolls for carrying their coal. And the other thing was the docks down in Cardiff were not expanding. So as a result of that, there were queues of wagons. You could wait a day to even drop a wagon off there, let alone get it onto a ship. And they were getting frustrated. There was various meetings, there was various sort of deputations to the dock owners. And in the end, there was a meeting in Parliament, at which point someone just casually mentioned something which would create and change this area for good. David Davis was a very powerful mine owner, a Welshman who had mines up in the Rhondda and other parts of Wales called the Ocean Collieries. And someone just casually said to him, well, why don't you open your own dock? And he thought, well, why don't I? And as a result, him, John Corey, Lord Plymouth, a number of other mine owners set about looking for a place where they could build their own docks. There were a couple of places they looked. Ogmore was one, and as someone who spent a lot of time on the beach at Ogmore, I'm glad they didn't build there. But what they did do was found Barry. Barry was a small village down in the Vale of Glamorgan, and it was ideal for a dock. And so they put forward a bill in 1884 and were successful in getting the necessary powers they needed to build it. And this image shows them on some planks of wood on a muddy morning, breaking ground on what would be Barry Docks. But if you have docks, you need a railway, obviously, and so they set about building one. They took it from Barry up through Wenvo and then headed up towards the Rhondda Valley. In 1889, it opened up from Barry up to Pontypridd. There were links at Trehavard and also at Treforest, which meant they could easily get their coal down the Taff Vale, just a short run, into their sidings and heading back down towards Barry Docks. Interesting enough, today there is this country park called Barry Sidings at Trehavard, and the reason is this was the location of the link between the two lines. Having been successful with this one, they set about looking at, well, where else can we start getting coal in from? And they looked over at the rich pickings of the Rumney Valley, but there are issues to get there. Just down from where we are here is what's known as Nantgarrow Gap. It's where Taff's Well is, and at one point there were 5 railways, a canal and a river all trying to get through that gap. It was very congested. The Taff Vale themselves had 4 tracks, 2 freight and 2 mixed, not the other way around. Passengers were a second thought. The Rumney came down what's known as the Big Hill from Penrose, and trying to get their coal from the Rumney Valley would have meant crossing all 4 tracks and going up that hill and being very reliant on both the Taff Vale and the Rumney. Now they had running powers to do it, to go up the city line from where their line ended at Cogan and up through Radda and into Taff's Well, but they knew they'd be limited in how much traffic they could get. So they set about building a new line, and with it a brand new structure. As you can see from this map, the line came off around about St Fagans. It headed up through Radda and then into Garth Tunnel. Today this tunnel is blocked off, and there's a good reason for it. On the other side of it, and you wouldn't believe it, in this bird song and quiet little cutting, on the other side of it is a giant quarry, and this quarry has cut this tunnel in two. It is unbelievably unsafe in there, but this portal remains, and even though every time I come up here it's getting more and more overgrown, it's still quite a magnificent structure. From here it would have passed along this rock ledge on the side of the hill, before it reached Walnut Tree Viaduct. At the end of this rock shelf, the line veered out to the right and onto the viaduct. It was 1,500 foot long, 7 spans, over 120 foot above the valley floor. And I'm not going to do any more descriptions. I'm just going to run some photos because they describe it far better than I do. In 1923, the Barry Railway became part of the Great Western Railway, and this line stayed open. Some of the bits closed, for example, the Viaduct, the Braddock, down Penrose wasn't needed. There were other lines that could take the traffic, but this stayed open. And all went well until March 1963. At that point, there was a fire at Tinacaro signal box. That's the junction that came off the main line to get over here. And British Rail looked at it and went, yeah, we can take the traffic elsewhere. We're not going to rebuild it. We're not going to open it up again. And so they cut the line back. This image here was taken on an RCTS rail tour and is in their collection. And you can see the tunnel, and there are stop blocks, because effectively this became one giant long branch line. Why do they still need to run trains and keep the viaduct open? Well, the answer is steely dolomite. This was a works that took the stone that's being mined up over the top there and converted it into, well, dolomite, which was used as part of steel making. It was quite an important part of the steel making process, and trains ran across the viaduct to get there. But as time went on, even they dwindled down. It was, to put it bluntly, a bit of a faff. The train had to run over the viaduct, then the loco had to run all the way back up to Penrose Junction and all the way back down again, running as light loco, in order to effectively run around the train. At the same time, in order to operate the signal box, to operate the points to get into the dolomite siding, the signalman quite often had to run and ride on the train or walk up from Tasswell Station down there. In 1967, they said enough. And as a result of that, they decided to close the line and close the viaduct. These two images are quite special. They were taken by Bob Masterman, and you can see this 08 shunter on a freight in a cutting, but that is the cutting on the other side of the viaduct. There's very few photos I've come across that are there. And then he took a picture of it on the viaduct itself. You can see by that time it was down to a single line. The last train ran in December 1967. The tracks were pulled up in 1969, and in 1974 it was demolished. It's fair to say it didn't want to go easily. One of the cranes that was used with the demolition apparently fell off one of the pillars. Fortunately, the crane driver was okay, but it took a little bit of getting down. The main reason it had to go is a couple of the pillars were in the way of the A470. And as we know from history, the A470 cut through an awful lot, and in one place took out a whole village. The viaduct, quite frankly, didn't stand a chance. This image was taken with permission, showing the tracks being pulled up on the viaduct in 1969, and just goes to show how large it was. And these images show it being pulled down. The villagers gathered from miles away to see this thing coming down. And it's fair to say, looking at some of these photos, there's probably no health and safety in those days that would stop them going anywhere near it like there would be today. So what's left? Well, obviously the tunnel entrance. It's a big lump of stone here which looks as though it could have come off one of the buildings that was down here. But you can see the tunnel itself is in pretty good condition. However, inside it is a little bit of a death trap, and even though I know people say, oh yeah, we've been in and we've had a look around, it really isn't good. And there's a reason why these signs are on here. There are rock falls and all sorts of things going on in there. Walking down the line a bit, there is this structure here, which would have been a plate layer's hut. I think in the first video I said that this was probably the signal box, but when you look at the distance between there and this, and the fact that I've been corrected by people who quite genuinely know better than I do, that was a plate layer's hut. And we wander on down. Every time I come up here, it's more and more overgrown. And even though this path is well trod, I think it's fair to say, it does worry me that one day this will all succumb to nature. As we wander a bit further along this structure here, I come through the trees. Walnut Tree, the signal box. It would have been, you can see from this image here what it would look like. You can tell 2 stories because there is the fireplace flue going up, and in the top of it, right, managed to zoom in, you can just about make out the fire grate of the room that would have been upstairs. Interestingly enough, alongside the signal box is another little hut. Now, this could have been a couple of things. I've seen these around the place as fogman's cabins, but I've got to be honest with you, I think this was possibly the toilet. If someone knows, then please let me know. So the tunnel, the signal box, can only mean that just along here there has to be a viaduct. It would be hard in some respects to miss it, but in other respects it's getting more and more overgrown. There we go. This is the entrance to Walnut Tree Viaduct, and as I said, it's swung round to the right. And see whether the path in is still there. Wall along there. Here is the other parapet, and we should be able to get through here. So we are actually on the viaduct itself. It's rather sad to say that it went, but it was costing way too much to maintain. And in those days, back in the 1960s, the thoughts of preserving stuff was, well, quite frankly, not what went through people's minds. How much is gone? Well, we can discuss that another time. What you can see across there is the other parapet. There are 2 up there, and you can make out the other one just there. That's the one that if you drive up the A470 you can see from Taswell, from the A470 itself. And straight across there would have been the cutting, which I showed you earlier on, where that OH shunter was pulling that train. Within literally a few months of it opening, the coal was flowing. 1.5 million tons within the first year. A huge amount was carried over here. But people remember coming over here in excursion trains as well. You see, the Barry Railway developed and invented Barry Island. So what better way to get people to it than by train? And Sunday schools and school groups, miners' institutes, all this sort of thing will crowd onto excursion trains from all sorts of railway companies, which would come over Walnut Tree Viaduct and head down towards Barry Island. And there are a lot of people with a lot of memories of this viaduct. There's also stories as well that when they introduced the diesel multiple units on the Rumney line, if Caerphilly Tunnel was closed, they'd bring the trains out through Ely and St Fagans, round the loop onto the old Barry line, and up through and over the viaduct. Can you imagine sitting in front of one of these and ahead of you is this, without the fence? Would have been quite an interesting ride. Whilst the viaduct would have, and the railway would have carried on down here, this bit here is quite interesting because this would have been the siding for Steely Dolomite. And there is the remains of a building here, which would probably have been some sort of marshalling hut or something like that, which is in the woods here. And the outside of the viaduct here, you can see it. It's difficult because whenever you film you can't really see through the trees, but there it is over there. That's where I was standing just now. So you get a bit of a better idea of it. There we go. A few trees have been cleared, and actually you can see down through the archway there. I think 1 or 2 trees have been cleared back from up here. There it is there. and the siding would have been down here. And it's hard to believe that up on the side of the hill here would have been a massive, great big works belching out smoke. Looking over there, there's the A470. This picture is this roundabout over here, and you can see where the 470 had been built. Some of the pillars down, the viaduct down, but some of them left to come later. This one here, they never took down. It's still here. Trees growing out the top of it these days. Nature really will reclaim whatever it can. And what is interesting is, whilst I document the past, the future is literally in front of me. And I know, so by the way, if ever you've seen a clip of me doing stuff on the television, I say literally an awful lot, but in this case I think it's fair to say it's true. Because as I walk up to the barrier at the end of the viaduct, there is the Transport for Wales depot at Taswell. Has the tram trains, the old overlooking the new. So, Walnut Tree Viaduct, a monument, a memory, something special, but something that is sadly gone. Thank you for watching. If you like this sort of thing, please like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button, and I'll be back out again doing more soon. Until next time.